and Blackwater. He's somebody many of you know from his work at The Intercept as a founding editor and as a contributor where he started at Democracy Now! Please join me in welcoming Jeremy Scahill.
Well, I'm so troubled to be here with you on the one hand, but also humbled at hearing our brothers speak to us from Standing Rock. And you know, I'm from the state of Wisconsin originally, and one of the longest-serving political prisoners in this country is from Wisconsin, an indigenous man named Leonard Peltier. Leonard Peltier is one of my heroes, and the treatment of Leonard Peltier by the FBI, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and every presidential administration since he was framed of killing 2 FBI agents and then sentenced to life in prison has been one more injustice committed against Native people in this country, and it is shameful that President Obama seemingly is not going to pardon Leonard Peltier. Well, he may pardon some donors if they hooked up with some Bill Clinton on them. I also want to echo something that Chase was saying there via Skype about the role of private security at Standing Rock. You see, one of the things that has happened in the post-9/11 reality in this country, and unfortunately then in the rest of the world, is that the United States has renewed its addiction to mercenary forces. And I'm going to talk in a moment about Trump's Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, who is the sister of Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater Mercenary Force. But the mercenary firm at Standing Rock that was coordinating all of the other so-called private security companies, that's what they want to be called, that were attacking protesters with dogs, that were monitoring the communications of activists, and were participating in the brutality that we saw unleashed against Native people and their allies. The main firm that was coordinating this is a firm called Tiger Swan. And Tiger Swan was started by a former member of the U.S. Army's Delta Force named Jim Reese. This is a company that has both covert and overt contracts for the U.S. government in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And what the hell are they doing then, being sent down to be mercenaries, going after attacking indigenous people in this country under Mr. Transformative Nobel Prize-winning president, who took so long, after so many dog bites, beatings, spraying in the freezing cold of people, to finally sort of do something. I bring this up about President Obama because I think we all have to remember history. Now, I'm all in favor of saying no to fascism over Trump. And that is what we're facing with this administration. We're facing a normalization of what are clearly fascist, racist, white supremacist viewpoints that now are going to ascend in both an overt and covert way to the most powerful offices in this land. It's not that white supremacy hasn't always governed this country's interests, certainly at a domestic level, but also in its wars. It's that Trump is out in the open and bringing with him an empowerment. Who would have thought that we would be talking about the Ku Klux Klan in the way that we are today? What he is doing, and I think so many of the undecided voters that came out and voted for him were white supremacists who haven't been voting, and then they were energized. They had the hope and change message from Trump, sort of the bizarro version of it, and they came out and voted for the first time. And Trump is not the Ku Klux Klan's candidate of choice. But Trump and the Ku Klux Klan went into a marriage of convenience that is going to serve both of their interests, and Trump bears all responsibility for the attacks that happened against black people in this country as a result of him winning this election. And he wasn't dog whistling to the Ku Klux Klan, he was openly whistling at them, saying, come on out, the party's going to start, it's open season on black people. It's open season on immigrants in this country. It's open season on people who are wearing a hijab or a burqa or a niqab. It's open season on anyone who doesn't believe that this country is white and should always be white. That's the message that was sent to these people in an overt way from the podium of his candidacy, and now it's going to be from his presidential Twitter feed and from the people that he puts into power. But let's not just put all of this on Trump is a fascist, we need to mobilize against this. These are moments where if we don't learn from history, we're going to keep doing this over and over and over. I sort of refer to the Democrats as rape steppers. You know, the rape is in their backyard, and it's been in the same damn place since the beginning of the foundation of their party, and they always step, bam, and hit themselves in the face again by being vegetarians between meals. Oh, we're against war when it's Bush. Oh, no, Trump is a fascist. We better stand up now. Oh, my God, the Electoral College is a terrible thing. But where are these people when Obama's drone striking American citizens? Where are these people when Obama rebranded the Extraordinary Rendition Program as something else? By the way, it was started by President Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
The last Democrat before the 4 years of Cheney. Obama is the reporter-in-chief, has gone after immigrants in this country in an unprecedented manner, even making George Bush look a little bit more humane at times, because Obama wrapped it in a language of love and concern for immigrants in this country. The upholding of the USA Patriot Act, and then its ultimate expansion. The spying that was conducted by the NSA. You don't think Obama knew that they were collecting data on millions of unsuspecting Americans? Of course he did. And his director of national intelligence, James Clapper, went in front of the U.S. Senate and committed perjury when Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon asked him directly, are you collecting any form of data on American citizens? And he lied, and nothing has happened to him. In fact, he's celebrating that he's going to be retiring right now.
They're all liars.
Let's remember that, look, you want to speak, my friend. You can speak, but let's let people get their thoughts out.
All right.
The thing is, if you look at Bill Clinton's administration, and you go back that far, which for some people is maybe very far, or even before you were born, but let's talk about what happened under Bill Clinton. Under Bill Clinton, the U.S. initiated the longest sustained bombing campaign since Vietnam in Iraq under the guise of those so-called no-fly zones. Clinton presided over the most ruthless regime of economic sanctions in history that disproportionately targeted civilians, particularly young babies, pregnant women, and elderly people in Iraq. And they called those humanitarian sanctions that were aimed at toppling Saddam Hussein's regime. Now, I was in Iraq a lot during that period, and I can tell you that the hospitals of Iraq under Bill Clinton's administration looked like death rows for infants, filled with doctors who were educated in American and British universities, knew how to treat patients of their ailments, but were not allowed to import basic analgesics. They were reusing needles over and over. They didn't have bleach or anything to clean or sanitize, so they were using a resource Iraq had a lot of, which was oil. And so all the hospitals in Iraq were a mixture of the stench of death, blood, and gasoline. And if you think of the symbolism of that stench in the hospitals of Iraq during this period, it tells you a lot about what Bill Clinton and his administration were doing in Iraq at the time. In 1998, regime change in Iraq became the official law of the United States of America. And you know who voted for that? Well, first of all, let me tell you who wrote it. Who wrote it were the neocons. William Crystal, Donald Rumsfeld, all of the people you would imagine when Clinton was president wrote a letter under the banner of the Project for a New American Century. And they said to Bill Clinton, we need to make regime change the law of the land in Iraq. And Bill Clinton endorsed that. It then went to the House and the Senate, and Bernie Sanders voted for it. Bernie Sanders supported regime change in Iraq going as far back as 1998 and never once had to answer a question about that because we were too busy focusing on the kind of cult of personality around this and not the actual issues. I would have loved to have seen Bernie have an actual progressive who knew what they were talking about interrogate him on his own very troubled foreign policy record. You know, we can blast Hillary Clinton like a pinata because it's so convenient, because she's the very representation of everything wrong with the elite in this country. of the thieving, of the cronyism, of the whitewashing of what are called war crimes by liberals under Republicans, and then humanitarian interventions under Democrats. Hillary Clinton's the low-hanging fruit to hit at right now. You want to go after someone like Bernie Sanders who's saying, hey, I'm the change that's going to really shake up the two-party system here. But he never had to answer any actual tough questions about his horrible policy positions. Was he better on many issues than Hillary Clinton? Of course he was. Was he saying something that is news to many people in this room? No. What made the difference in all of this was that the media had to pay attention to Bernie Sanders because he started polling high. And Hillary Clinton, she was afraid to say his name for 3 months. Why did she say his name? Because, oh shit, Bernie's starting to rise in polls. So then cameras start to show up. And it's like, Bernie Sanders is a curmudgeonly, cranky, non-friendly kind of character in many ways. I used to hang up on me when I'm calling democracy now. But he was saying something that so many people in this country agree with. Fundamental truths about our financial system, about our social system. And so it was just, it showed that when you give someone exposure, when people are exposed to these ideas, it's not about the cult of personality of Bernie Sanders, it's about the ideas. And that should be our biggest source of inspiration from this electoral process, is that we are actually many. There are many, many of us. And a really old white man like Bernie Sanders is what ignites the fire. Imagine if we had a bunch of young people who were insisting the stage is ours, we are saying these things. You see, the Democrats, their role is to clean up the image of the empire so that it can continue again. So what did we have with Obama? Well, under Bush, we had, of course, the Patriot Act. Only one U.S. Senator, Russ Feingold, voted against it. The authorization for the use of military force, the so-called blank check, only one member of Congress, the entire Congress, voted against that, and that was Representative Barbara Lee of California. Let me tell you something, Barbara Lee is one of the few African Americans in the Congress. She got death threats. Her office was targeted. It should be required viewing for every young person in this country to watch the speech that Barbara Lee gave just days after 9/11 on the floor of the U.S. Congress when her own party and the Republicans were caving in on that woman, and she stood up and she committed an act of prophecy. She said, this is what's going to happen if you give them a blank check. We will engage in a war that will never end. We are going to open a Pandora's box of history that cannot be closed. She was the only one of those crooked lawmakers who actually saw the truth as though it was true. And I think when you go back and you look at that, you realize there are transformative moments when people, for whatever reason, rise up and actually shatter the paradigm of the moment. And often they're denounced as the radicals, the extremists, the crazies. But the radicals, the extremists, and the crazies are the only people that have ever actually fundamentally changed the course of history. The electoral college is going to change. And then we'll have an overt fascist, and I would be very glad if somebody other than Trump was there. Let's be clear on that. Just basic common sense about the kind of war on women that we're going to see, where you're going to have women who get pregnant facing an utterly criminalized abortion system. Already we have doctors being assassinated, women being harassed, attacks against people who want access to safe and affordable women's health care, including abortion procedures, because it is part of women's health care to choose to have an abortion. But under Trump, that can be criminalized. Doctors could be prosecuted. If they get 2 Supreme Court justices, which they very well, I'm not a very religious man, but I'm praying for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm really interested a lot. But they're going to have 2 Supreme Court justices. One of them could be someone like Ted Cruz. That's going to have a multi-generational impact. But if Hillary Clinton had won the election, we would have had a candidate of regime change. We would have had a candidate of empire. On a foreign policy level, there's ways in which she could be even more dangerous than Trump. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that these 2 forces have way more in common with each other than they do with almost any of us. And what does it mean that we have our first African-American president who becomes the drone warlord, who says we have the right to assassinate American citizens who have not been charged with any crime, and assassinate them 2 weeks later one of their 16-year-old sons, who no one came up with any evidence that this had anything to do with terrorism. Obama legitimized or sought to use his credibility as Mr. Nobel Prize-winning constitutional law scholar, transformative president. He used his credibility to seek to legitimize the worst aspects of the Bush-Cheney doctrine. He did a whitewashing of the drone program and convinced people that somehow drones are the alternative to boots on the ground. And you saw it where, I mean, MSNBC basically was MSDNC. They were just pumping out the propaganda for Obama. They would have made the barons of the Soviet media empire's propaganda sheet blush with how extreme their propaganda was and has been over President Obama. Get a little PC worried about what he did. So he says, oh, well, we're going to have to put some rules in about these drone strikes. Well, yeah, that's nice that you're doing that now that we're like 30 days away from Donald Trump. You're going to say, well, maybe there should be some rules to how we do this. And you know what happened is that the cult of personality around Obama meant that when they took polls of people on drone strikes, well, I just trust Obama. You know, Obama always says there's not a blue America, a red America, the United States of America. There's not Republican drone strikes and Democratic drone strikes. There's not Republican cruise missiles and Democratic cruise missiles. There are cruise missile and drone strikes in the United States of America. And Obama has now made it possible for Trump to basically say, fuck you, to the Democrats if they raise any questions about it. They're like, you're Nobel Prize winner was doing this, and Kissinger style. It's insane what happened here. And now we're stuck with this reality of Trump and Pence and the rising sort of overt nature of their fascist administration, in part because of who the Democrats are. Because of what the Democrats are. The U.S. has a tradition, and it requires a waiver if someone who has been in a senior position in the military is going to be appointed to oversee a civilian agency or a military agency, and they're going to be the civilian in charge of it. But Trump is appointing general after general after general to top posts. Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, who is his national security advisor, who, by the way, does not need to be confirmed by the Senate. Lieutenant General Mike Flynn was General Stanley McChrystal's top deputy when McChrystal was the head of the elite assassination force of the Joint Special Operations Command. He was the guy that drew up the plans for the United States to, as they put it, kill their way through Iraq and Afghanistan. This is a force that has been totally unaccountable and empowered further under the Obama administration. He also is a radical Islamophobe who truly does believe that Islam as a religion needs to be destroyed, not just people who conduct terrorist attacks and say they're doing it in the name of Islam. He wants the religion wiped out. General James Mattis, who led the siege of Fallujah when he was a commander on the ground in Iraq, he's the one that intervened and got the guys who did the Haditha massacre off the hook. He says sometimes it's just fun to shoot people, talking about killing people in Afghanistan, who he said, oh, these people beat women and make them wear burqas. Now, I'm against beating women, and the burqa issue is a complicated one if we want to actually have a discussion on that. But last time I checked, the U.S. does not give the death penalty to people who beat their wives or people who wear burqas. And you have the U.S. military commander basically saying, I bet those guys beat their wives. Not, we have evidence, we're going to take them to court, so I'm going to shoot them and it's fun. Think of the message that kind of sends to the world when you have now our Secretary of Defense is the guy who says it's certainly fun to shoot some people, meaning Muslim men in Afghanistan. You have General John Kelly, who is a vicious anti-immigrant, closed border advocate, who now is going to be in charge of the Department of Homeland Security. Then you have Admiral Mike Rogers, who's going to be running all of the spy operations through the DNI. And I could go on for a half hour or more about all of these guys. But I want to end by telling you about Mike Pence. I've been following Mike Pence's career for more than a decade. Mike Pence was raised a Kennedy Democrat Catholic in Indiana, and he was converted on the spot to evangelical Christianity at a Christian music festival. Very strong little guy, ready to take the reins of power. He goes to like the Christian right version of Lollapalooza, and it's like, oh yeah, yours. And so that's going to be our vice president. But he is one of the greatest holy warriors in the eyes of the radical religious right. He has been groomed for many years to be their sort of white horse running in to save the country from vicious secularism and scary atheists and gay people, and the list goes on. Mike Pence is what we call a theoconservative. He is a theological fascist, a Christian supremacist. I call him a Christian jihadist, and boy, did they go nutty over that. You don't know what the word jihad means. Oh, I know what it means. I'm just saying, like, when you use it next time, how about you think about the way you're using it? But he is a Christian jihadist. I think we should use the terms that they use for these guys are the American Taliban, they're the Christian jihadists. But what they want is a country that essentially functions as a theocracy on social matters and foreign policy, and then functions as a playground for the ultra-rich and the destroyers of the environment on their domestic policies, and their social platform is straight out of the 1300s. And these guys, Mike Pence and the people that put him there, know what they're doing. I want to see the story of how Trump ended up getting Pence put on him, because Trump looked like he had to, leave the room immediately. Come out, I was like, well, there's Mike Pence. I'll see you guys later. Great. That was not some friend of his. They only met once before. I'm telling you, Pence is the Trojan horse of this election for the radical religious right. And I think that, it's going to be interesting to see who plays the fascist chess game better, Trump or Pence, because Pence is a very dangerous person. Pence also is very close to the Blackwater mercenary firm, which brings me to the last point. Betsy DeVos, who is the sister of Eric Prince, the owner or the founder of Blackwater, who, by the way, now is showing his American patriotism by operating a private security company in China with ties to Chinese intelligence. It's great in America. He's making China great again for Donald Trump by having a mercenary firm in China. His sister is going to be the Secretary of Education. What Eric Prince wants for the military and the CIA, sort of radical privatization, which comes with less and less regulation, less and less oversight, less and less accountability, and a lot more killing, she wants for education. She believes in a radically privatized school system, and she also simultaneously believes that government funding should go to provide religious education, Christian religious education across the United States. She is one of the only people in the cabinet richer than Donald Trump. She married Dick DeVos, the heir to the Amway Corporation fortune, the people that used to own the Orlando Magic basketball team. And the Prince family and the DeVos family merged, like the monarchies of old Europe, and they gave all the original seed money in the late 80s, early 90s, to financing the organizations that became known as Focus on the Family, James Dobson, Gary Bauer. These were the families that gave most of the money to the rise of the radical religious right. It is no coincidence that Betsy DeVos is the education secretary and that Mike Pence is the vice presidential candidate. Those two, I would say, are two of the individuals in this cabinet to watch so vigilantly, because they know how to do damage. This isn't Ben Carson wandering the halls of housing trying to figure out where Matthew is. He's going to be in charge of making you homeless and underdeveloped. But these are serious fucking people who have a very hateful agenda. They hate gay people with a passion. Imagine their Christmas dinner. Who's worse, I mean, the fags or the Mexicans? I just don't know. I saw some people kissing the other day, and they both appeared to be, I don't even know what gender they were. And then Eric Prince comes in, and it's like, oh, well, I just killed some more Muslims. It's like a very sick family, and they're in a lot of, in an unprecedented position of power. So, we're in this moment now where I think if we fail to understand that part of how we got here is that many liberals and many people, even good-hearted, smart people, go to sleep when the Democrats are in power.
Yeah.
And if you look back on the 8 years, and all of us ask ourselves, like, what did we do while this was going on? Where were we when the drone strike stuff happened? When Obama started wars in Somalia and Yemen, and then another war in Iraq, and then surged in Afghanistan, and then they did the coup in Honduras, and then they continued with the neoliberal economic agenda that punishes the poor and sends U.S. workers to a race to the bottom of the wage scale with people from around the world. Where were you when all of this was happening? And if you don't have much to say for it, then you've got a lot of catching up to do with the work that needs to be done, because Trump isn't just the product of a bunch of racist hillbillies voting for him. There were people who voted twice for Obama and then voted for Trump.
Yeah.
And the question as to why is one that we should be asking ourselves, but also getting away from this illusion that if we just elect Hillary, or we just elect another Democrat, or if we just get out in the midterms, that anything will fundamentally change, then we're whistling past the graveyard.
Yep.
And the last thing I'll say to you is that, we need to realize that unless we shatter this two-party system, nothing's ever going to fundamentally change in this country. Unless we get corporations away from controlling all of the politicians in this country, nothing will ever fundamentally change in terms of what Washington has to offer people. And we've all been hoodwinked into this funnel that every 2 years or every 4 years, boy, if you don't support John Kerry, then Bush is going to be, no, I'm sick of that shit.
Yeah.
So let's follow through and say the whole Philly system is the problem, and it helped to produce a fascist that we must all, with every fiber in our body, oppose until he is no longer there.